Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world. For this explainer, we're digging into a classic, Alan Watts's brilliant 1940 book, The Meaning of Happiness. Now, we're not just summarizing it. Instead, think of this as building a blueprint, using his insights to map out a system that, well, affects pretty much all of us. And just to be super clear about this, what we're building here is a diagnostic tool. It is not a self-help guide. The whole point is to see a system clearly, not to tell you how to fix anything. So let's start with the big question that drives Watts's entire analysis. Why is it that the very act of chasing happiness seems to push it further away? You know that feeling, right? It just leaves us more anxious than when we even started. Watts just nails this feeling with a perfect image. It's like trying to catch soap with wet fingers. The harder you squeeze, the faster it shoots out of your hand. And you know what? This paradox isn't some random fluke. It's a core built-in feature of the system we're all operating in. Okay, so let's actually define that system. To get to the bottom of this, we have to stop seeing our struggle for happiness as some kind of individual failing. Instead, we need to see it for what it is, the completely predictable output of a specific framework. We're going to call it the happiness system. At its core, it's a way of thinking that puts your ego, your conscious I, right at the center of the universe. It tells you that you are separate from the world and that happiness is this thing, this object out there that you have to acquire, achieve, and then hold on to for dear life. This really gets at the primary action within the system, which is chasing. We're constantly told that with enough willpower, with enough conscious effort, we can finally catch happiness. But as Watts points out, the chase itself sets up a fundamental contradiction. So how does this system actually function? Every system has its own internal logic, right? It rewards certain behaviors and discourages others. So what actions does the happiness system incentivize? In a word, control. The system rewards control above all else. It pushes your rational thinking mind to dominate your messy, unpredictable instincts. It encourages you to suppress discomfort, to see feelings like sadness or anxiety as problems that need to be eliminated. And of course, it champions constant striving and productivity, this idea that we must always be doing something to fix ourselves and finally secure that happiness. All right, so what happens if we play by these rules? If we're constantly trying to control and suppress our inner nature in pursuit of some external goal, what are the predictable results? What does this system actually produce? Watts uses this fantastic metaphor for this. He says the modern psyche operates like a thermostat that's been wired backward. A normal thermostat senses cold and turns on the heat to create warmth. Simple. But our psyche, it senses discomfort. And in its frantic, desperate effort to eliminate it, it actually just amplifies it. The attempt to fix the problem is the problem. And this backward wiring creates what Watts calls a vicious circle. It starts by isolating the ego, making it the one solely responsible for fixing everything. So the ego strives for happiness, which only reinforces the feeling that it's separate from life itself. This deepens the sense of alienation and anxiety, which of course just causes the ego to strive even harder, and around we go. This loop leads to some pretty inevitable outcomes. We become alienated from our own inner selves. We repress the parts of us that don't fit the neat and tidy rational plan. Our identity becomes fragmented. It's like the conscious me is at war with the unconscious me. And in the end, the system produces the very suffering it promises to eliminate. And here's the crucial part. The ego trapped in this system cannot save itself. It's impossible. As Watts puts it, it's like trying to pick yourself up by your own belt. All that effort, all that straining just digs you deeper. It's a physical and psychological impossibility. So you gotta ask, right? If this system is so obviously counterproductive, why is it so resilient? Why do we all keep running around in this same circle? Well, there are two huge drivers keeping it in place. First, cultural normalization. The belief in the supremacy of reason isn't new. Watts notes it's a centuries-old heritage. It's the water we swim in. And second, there's massive institutional reinforcement. The entire industry of self-improvement is built on the premise that the ego can and should fix itself if you just try harder, use more techniques, and exert more control. Now, let's zoom out to get the full picture. Because this psychological system doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It's deeply interconnected with the larger systems that structure our whole society. I mean, think about it. The inner demand for rational control, for efficiency, for constant striving. It perfectly mirrors the logic of industrial production and modern work culture. The way we treat our own minds is really just a reflection of how our broader economic and social systems operate. And this is the crisis in perception. The problem isn't a lack of effort, it's a fundamental misperception of the situation itself. Here's the misperception, that happiness is an external object that must be won by a separate ego. But the structural reality, as Watts explains it, is that happiness isn't an object at all. It's a relationship, a state of harmony between the conscious self and the totality of our experience, both the good and the bad. It's not something to be gained, but a fact to be realized. Which leaves us with a final provocative question. And remember, this explainer isn't about giving an answer. It's about achieving structural clarity. If the very effort to escape the trap is what builds the trap, how do we even begin to perceive a different way of being? Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.